Hey folks, Nathan here. Welcome to Nate's Favorite Deck Building Games. This time we're checking out something a little bit different for Legendary that ties into Marvel but isn't necessarily part of the core Legendary Marvel line. Legendary Marvel, as we've seen, is that Legendary game type from Upper Deck, which does have other variants like Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And then Marvel is this giant product line for that game type, where you have the Heroic base set, which is just Legendary Marvel. Then you have the Villains base set labeled as Villains, and tons of large and small expansions, all of which build upon those games, but which require one of those two base sets to play. Well, for the 10th anniversary of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Upper Deck has put out something a little bit different here. What we have here is a standalone Legendary Marvel game specific to Marvel Studios the first 10 years. Now I say it's standalone because everything you need to play is in this box. This can be your base set. Now, you can integrate this like an expansion with any of the other Marvel Legendary stuff. That's totally fine. But it is meant to be standalone, so you don't have to have one of the other base sets to be able to play. It's all in this box, even if this box looks about the size of what we'd expect for one of the larger expansions to the original Legendary Marvel game. Now, one thing that is a little bit frustrating about this is the Legendary Marvel Studios The First 10 Years Phase 1 set. And you've got your box here that's sort of advertising it as it sits on the shelves. We have our rulebook, and yes, it is a full-size rulebook. You'll need to have the entire rulebook to play the game. It does play basically like Legendary, so we're not going to talk about all the ins and outs of how it plays, just the new mechanics here as we do with any expansion. But notice that when you come down to it, there are 13 images that they're using to promote this on the packaging itself. And I'm hoping that as they put out more of these, we'll eventually see them just labeled as Phase 2, Phase 3, whatever. But if you look at this, you have 13 images on here. Not counting characters who appear in Phase 1 and eventually wind up looking different in later phases, and it's those different looks that you're seeing on here. Notice that 7 out of 13, over half the images on the rulebook and on the box, are from characters who don't even appear in Phase 1. So if you're picking up this game expecting to play as the Guardians of the Galaxy, or Black Panther, or Doctor Strange, too bad, so sad you're not going to be able to do it. Make sure you're keeping an eye out for how it says Phase 1. That's what's going to tell you which films and which characters are tied into this specific set. Now, aside from the rulebook, we always take a look at what we have to actually play it on, and usually we're dealing with one of the playmats or the boards from one of those base sets of Marvel Legendary. Well, this being a standalone game, we've got a brand new playmat that fits inside that box. But they made one real big concession to making it fit in the box that kind of bugs me a little bit. Okay? You've got your city, you've got your headquarters, you got your spots for all the cards that we're going to take a look at as we see what's actually in the box. But look what they've done to the top for our top stacks. They've given us basically a place to tell us, yeah, this is where you're going to put your card. It's just that we're only going to give you half the card on the playmat, and half the card is going to be sticking up off the top of the playmat. Now, that's not a big deal from a gameplay perspective, but it looks a little weird and feels a little cheap. So, cool image, and nice that we've got a playmat instead of having to just play it on, a regular table or something, but it just seems a little bit weird as they cut off half of all of those top cards. I actually initially thought when I saw it, is this a printing error or something? But no, of course it isn't, because when you roll it up, it's got to be able to actually fit inside that box, and that's as big as the box is. So yes, you get a playmat, but it is a bit odd. But layout-wise, it's essentially the way that we're used to for Legendary, albeit with most of the spots not actually labeled in any way. You just got to know where to put things by looking at the rules. But yes, the headquarters and city, they are labeled as you would normally expect. Now, of course, when playing a Legendary game, you're going to need a scheme, and this game includes 8 schemes. We have Unleash the Power of the Cosmic Cube, Enslave Minds with the Chitauri Scepter, Replace Earth's Leaders with Hydra, Radioactive Palladium Poisoning, Superheroes Civil War, Destroy the Cities of Earth, Asgard Under Siege, Invade Asgard, and then we're back to Unleash the Power of the Cosmic Cube. Of course, our schemes are going to be up here. It's one of our slots that's missing the top half. And then we're going to need to do scheme twists as we play and put them into that pile up there next to it. The game includes a total of 12 scheme twists. And you'll notice here with both the scheme twist and those schemes we just looked at, you'll see a pattern in that every single card is going to tell you which movie from Phase 1 it's from. Then alongside our masterminds, which we'll see shortly, we're going to need some master strikes. So we have our master strikes here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them, which of course will go over here once used. We're going to need wounds. And in this case, our wounds are all the same. There are no grievous wounds or anything. It's just regular wounds, so they're going to go face up, all 30 of them, right over here. Now, as far as bystanders go, our bystander stack is going to be face down, unlike in the original starting game for Legendary, because we have 30 of these regular bystanders here. But then we have 3 each of 4 different special bystanders with different abilities. We have Jane Foster. We have Pepper Potts. We have Peggy Carter. And we have Happy Hogan. All of those will wind up shuffled in with your other bystanders to give you a face-down bystander deck. For our always available card, we're going to have a Shield Officer that costs 3 recruit points to get and gives you 2 when played. And sure enough, just like in the regular game, I love this continuity between the games, they decided to make it Maria Hill just like in regular Marvel Legendary. Now, they did give you an extra space here you're not actually going to wind up using in this game, but you may wind up using it if you add in some other games and play this with some of the expansions from regular Legendary Marvel. So we do have a blank space here that otherwise is not used within this particular version of the game. Now you have 30 of those Shield Officers. Then of course you're going to need to put together your starting decks for everyone. And in this case, the game is designed to let you play with 6 different players, so you have enough for 6 different starting decks. So the thing you're going to have 8 of in your starting hand is your Shield Agent. Of course, pulling from Thor, they've got Coulson there. No, it does not bring in the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. TV show. That doesn't really play into it at this point. And then we've got our Shield Trooper coming from the Avengers here. You have 24 of those. Again, enough for 6 players to have starting decks of 4 and 8. Then, of course, we have our Masterminds. We have our Mastermind card and the Mastermind Tactics, 4 of them to go with it. As always, no double-sided stuff, no advanced or transforming or anything like that. We have Ironmonger from the original Iron Man. We have Loki, labeled as from Thor, but of course he was also a major villain in the Avengers. Then we have Red Skull from Captain America, the first Avenger. We do not have any Masterminds here from Iron Man 2 or from Incredible Hulk. Then we've got our villain groups. 5 of them, 8 cards each as usual. We have our villains called the Iron Foes. We have the Chitauri. We have Hydra. We have the Enemies of Asgard. And finally, we have the Gamma Hunters, some of the few cards in the set that actually go from the Incredible Hulk. Most of the Incredible Hulk stuff, even the Hulk cards, don't actually come from that film. It's actually mostly from Avengers when it comes to Hulk-related items. Then as far as our henchmen, 10 cards each, we have the 10 Rings Fanatics from Iron Man. We have Hydra Pilots from Captain America, the First Avenger. We have the Hammer Drone Army from Iron Man 2. And then we have Hydra Spies from Captain America, the First Avenger. That brings us to our heroes, and as always, we have 14 cards for each of them, and in this case, we have 7 heroes. We start with Iron Man, who of course was introduced in the first MCU film, which was Iron Man, and in the post-credit scene, we were also introduced into Nick Fury, who'd play a bigger role later. In The Incredible Hulk, we were introduced to the Hulk, though bear in mind that in this game, the images of the Hulk or of Bruce Banner are actually coming from Avengers, so they don't show Edward Norton. Then we got to Iron Man 2, which introduced us to Black Widow. Then Thor, which introduced us to Thor himself, but then also in a minor role to Hawkeye. And then finally, of course, we had Captain America, the First Avenger, which introduced us to Captain America, and of course they combined for the Avengers. Now, as I said, this plays pretty much like any Marvel Legendary game, so there's not really any new mechanics to talk about, save for one keyword. Heck, even the team icons are just going to give us the Avengers and S.H.I.E.L.D. like we've seen before. We do have one new keyword, though, which is Conqueror. you're going to see a city space name, then Conqueror, then a number. So in this case, Justin Hammer from the Iron Foes villains here is listed as Bank Conqueror 2. What it means is that if any villain, that means henchman villain or regular villain, if any villain is in that space, in this case the bank, in the city, then this card gets plus whatever number it is to its attack. In this case, +2 attack. And we do have masterminds that do this also. So it's not that this card necessarily has to be in the bank. He could be over here on the bridge or something. But as long as you've got some villains sitting there in the bank taking up that space, it's considered conquered by the villains, and the bonus applies. So there you have it. Legendary Marvel Studios, The First 10 Years, Phase 1, a Marvel deck building game. Quite the mouthful here. A cool new way to play Legendary, possibly a way to get people who maybe haven't played Legendary into it by hooking them with a connection to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Just, again, keep in mind that it is only covering Phase 1 despite what you'll see on the packaging and the rulebook. So make sure that you kind of know what you're getting into here. And hopefully what this means is that we're going to see either another of these base games for Phase 2, which I think is unlikely, or we're going to wind up seeing some expansions to go into Phase 2 and 3 and hopefully onward to bring more MCU characters, situations, and hopefully new game mechanics into Legendary. For now, this is the only one we have, unless you want to count Spider-Man Homecoming's small expansion that I mentioned previously. But it's a nice start as a standalone game instead of an expansion.